The heat in the valley didn't just sit on you, it pressed down like a physical weight. Staff Sergeant Sarah Vance adjusted the strap of her heavy combat medic pack, the nylon digging into her collarbone through her sweat-soaked body armor. Around her, the infantrymen of 3rd Platoon moved like ghosts through the abandoned clay compounds of the village, their boots kicking up fine, flour-like dust that coated everyone in a dull, gritty gray. Sarah was a medic, but out here, she was simply Doc. She had earned that title through 2 rough deployments, but this valley, this jagged, hostile stretch of earth, felt different. The silence was too heavy, the air too still. "Keep your spacing, people," the platoon leader, Lieutenant Miller, crackled over the short-range radio. "We're almost to the extraction point." Then, the world tore wide open. It started with the sickening, metallic thud of an RPG hitting the lead vehicle, followed instantly by the deafening, rhythmless roar of coordinated machine gun fire from the ridges above. The air turned to lead. Sarah threw herself against a crumbling mud wall, the impact knocking the wind out of her as plaster and dust rained down on her helmet. Through the smoke, the blinding grit, and the deafening chaos of return fire, she heard the one sound she dreaded most. "Medic! We got men down. Doc, we need you up front." Instinct took over before her brain could fully process the danger. Sarah unclipped her rifle, slung it tight against her chest, and took a deep breath of hot, metallic air. "Cover me," she screamed to the nearest rifleman, not waiting to see if he heard her over the deafening din of the ambush. She vaulted over the low wall, staying low, her boots churning through the loose dirt. Bullets snapped past her ears with a sharp, terrifying crack, the unmistakable sound of rounds passing inches away. To her left, the lead Humvee was a twisted mass of black smoke and licking orange flames. 2 soldiers were trapped in the ditch beside it, pinned down by heavy, accurate fire from a dual-position machine gun bunker nestled in the rocks above. Sarah slid into the dirt beside them, kicking up a cloud of dust. It was Corporal Miller and Private First Class Torres. Miller was clutching his thigh, bright arterial blood pulsing through his fingers. Torres was shell-shocked, staring blankly at the sky while his rifle lay forgotten in the dirt. "Torres! Look at me." Sarah grabbed his shoulder harness, shaking him hard until his eyes focused on hers. "I need you to apply pressure right here. Do not let go. Understand?" Without waiting for his nod, she ripped open her medical kit. Her hands were steady, a stark contrast to the chaos screaming around them. She packed the wound with combat gauze, shoving it deep to stem the bleeding, and wrapped a tourniquet high and tight around Miller's leg, cranking it down until the pulse stopped. Miller groaned, his face turning an ashen gray. "You're gonna make it, Lieutenant," she yelled over the roar of a nearby grenade explosion. "But we have to move. Now." That was when she looked up and saw the rest of the squad. A second RPG had struck the rear vehicle, cutting off their retreat. They were completely boxed in, trapped in a perfect, lethal crossfire. And from the ridge, a group of enemy fighters was already starting to move down, aiming to flank and overrun their position. With the exit blocked and the enemy closing in, Sarah knew the math of the situation was simple and brutal. If someone didn't suppress that flanking fire right now, none of them were going home. She grabbed Miller's discarded M4 carbine, tossing her empty medic pack aside to move faster. "Torres, drag Miller behind that stone foundation. Keep your heads down," she ordered, her voice cutting through the noise with absolute, chilling authority. Sarah didn't wait. She burst from the shallow ditch, sprinting directly into the open toward a shallow trench that offered a flanking angle on the advancing fighters. Bullets kicked up geysers of dirt at her heels. A piece of shrapnel sliced her cheek, but she didn't even feel it. Her focus narrowed to a laser-sharp point. Dropping to her knees, she raised the rifle and fired, dropping the lead fighter of the flanking element. She pivoted, firing 3-round bursts, driving the rest of them back behind the boulders. But the heavy machine gun on the ridge was still chewing their position to pieces. They were running out of time, and the squad's ammunition was dangerously low. Looking up at the rocky bunker, she saw the muzzle flashes. She had one grenade left on her vest. In a reckless, desperate surge of adrenaline, Sarah stood up. She ran uphill, straight toward the bunker, utilizing the smoke from the burning Humvee as cover. The enemy gunner spotted her too late. As she reached the base of the ridge, she pulled the pin, cooked the grenade for a terrifying 2 seconds, and pitched it directly into the narrow slit of the bunker. An instant later, a sharp explosion rocked the hillside. The devastating machine gun fire finally fell silent. But the victory was instantly cut short. As Sarah turned to scramble back to her squad, a sniper's round caught her high in the shoulder, spinning her around and slamming her hard onto the rocky ground. The impact knocked the wind out of her, and the sky above began to spin. Through the haze of sudden, blinding pain, she could hear the distant, beautiful thud of friendly air support finally echoing through the valley. The world came back in fragments of sterile white light, the rhythmic, electronic beep of a heart monitor, and the smell of antiseptic. When Sarah finally opened her eyes, she wasn't in the dust of the valley anymore, she was in a hospital bed at Walter Reed. Her shoulder was bandaged, her body ached, but she was alive. And so were her men. Torres and Miller had made it out of that ditch because she stood her ground. Months later, the humid, heavy air of Washington, D.C. felt nothing like the dry heat of the valley, but the tension in Sarah's chest was just as tight. She stood in her dress blues, her posture military straight despite the lingering ache in her shoulder. Before her stood the President of the United States, holding a heavy, wooden box. The citation was read to a silent, packed room, words like conspicuous gallantry, intrepidity, and beyond the call of duty echoed off the walls. But Sarah barely heard them. Her eyes were locked on the front row of the gallery, where Miller, walking with a cane, and Torres were standing, tears in their eyes, saluting her. The President stepped forward, draping the blue silk ribbon of the Medal of Honor around her neck. The heavy gold medal rested against her uniform, catching the light. "Staff Sergeant Vance," the President whispered, shaking her hand with deep, quiet reverence. "Your country can never repay you for what you did." Sarah swallowed the lump in her throat, looked past the cameras, and locked eyes with her squad. She didn't feel like a hero. She just felt like a medic who had done her job to make sure her brothers got to come home. She raised her hand to her brow, returning the salute, finally letting the weight of the valley go. This story captures the incredible courage of Staff Sergeant Sarah Vance, a U.S. Army combat medic who braved devastating enemy fire to save her wounded comrades and single-handedly eliminate a critical threat. Her selflessness and bravery under fire earned her the Medal of Honor, the nation's highest military decoration. It stands as a testament to the sacrifice, courage, and unbreakable bonds forged in the heat of combat. Make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't lose track of us. This is where I'll be sharing a ton of real, raw stories from my fellow brothers and sisters in arms about their service, the reality of combat, and the true meaning of brotherhood. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and stay tuned for the next stories.